Hey, I'm back. As you can see, it looks like a bomb went off on my table here. Been doing a lot of PR work and doing flight demos at airports, and it's just been hectic. I mean, it's one thing after another. Every single day I've been gone. And a trip to the airport and back that's about darn near 100 miles. So it kills my day pretty much. It's been going on like that for almost a month, and the last meeting is done. I was at the airport again tonight talking to the guys and the mayor of the city, and we got things straightened around for other events to happen down the road. So that's done. So I am going to clean off my bench and get rid of all this stuff. And since it's like 8:30 at night, I am going to just clean off the table, set up my stuff again, and we'll start fresh. Because what I did was I had bits and pieces of this video done already, maybe about 15 minutes of it, but it's all little short little chunks. And when I put it all together, it didn't make very much sense, so I'm going to undo everything I did. And I'm going to start fresh with the video. Be a little more organized, I hope. And you're probably wondering about this Phoenix 7. I dorked this plane in several years ago and never got around to fixing it. It's minor stuff. The retract platform broke loose and cracked up some of the fuselage. It has to be glassed and painted and whatever, but I was gutting it, really, saving Peter, robbing Peter to save Paul, basically. Took the servos out, had to put them in a trainer for the club, had to rebuild the trainer, and that's what a lot of this junk is, because it was a kind of emergency thing. We had our training night come up, and I was given the trainer, and I couldn't get to it until like the day of the trainer training day. Completely restored it in about 6 hours. Took it out, flew it. So that was pretty much done. That happened just in the last couple days, so that's why I got this mess. So I'm gonna stop the video, clean this stuff off, and I'll be back here tomorrow fresh in the morning. So I'll see you in a few seconds. Kits, I think, are the way to go, because you don't have that cookie cut. Actually, fiberglassing, painting, if you roll it forward, kind of pressing it like this, as hard as a brick bat. One last thing on tip blocks is that you want to cut outside of the line. SIG Kougar build part 8, formers. We are on step 29 in the manual. Welcome back, everybody. I know it's going to be back. This is part 9 of the SIG Kougar build. This is a SIG Cobra. It's the 20 size version. Well, it's the next day. I got everything cleaned off. And, well, almost everything. And you can see I've already started working on it a little bit. Have a hole back here so I can access this rod. When I do this, I usually pre-build this all in so I don't have to cut a hole, but this is kind of an afterthought. I wanted to see everything first before I went in and did my modifications, and I've done this before, it's not a big deal. So I cut a little hole in there, and the worst part about it is I lost the piece to put back in there, so I'm gonna have to make a new one. And another thing that happened when I was moving everything around the bench, I knocked this dude off the bench. I mean, it went down hard and it busted the horizontal stabilizer right off the plane. And you can see that I got it back together, and let's see, I don't know if you can tell or not, but I had to put filler in here because there's a little kind of a jagged gash that I just couldn't quite get right. So I glued it in perfectly solid, nothing wrong with it, it just looked terrible. And I've already filled it so you can't see the thing that I did to it. But the filling part is not really a big deal, because we're going to do it all along the turtle deck and the vertical stabilizer. And wing fillets, that definitely have to have wing fillets. So you'll get to see a lot of the filling anyways. So, but I just wanted to fill you in on the stupid things that I do around here every now and then. And what happened was, it was the Phoenix 7, and I hit that plane against this. It was sitting on the bench, and it was kind of bizarre because I had it half, like the stab was hanging half off the edge of the bench. And when that Phoenix went down on it, it just snapped and down to the floor it went and busted completely off. So that's where I'm at. I didn't get a chance to really disassemble anything, but I'll show you some things I did do. You've seen before that how I put my hinges in. I mark my line, and I'll use a thread to line it all up, and I have my hinge slots in there, and the vertical fin and the rudder. I've already installed this, but I'm going to take this out and I'll show you step by step on how I get that in there. It's not a real big deal. And this has been slotted right back in here. It's kind of tight, but it fits good. The elevator push rod is already in. Where is it? Right back here. That's a no-brainer. Let me talk about that for a second. What I did is I centered up my horn to the hole, so the vertical part of the horn is centered with the hole. And I bought, where is it? There it is. A couple of these. This is SIG Pro hardware, they call it. They call it arrow shaft push rod, and it's really heavy duty stuff, but it's nice and light. It comes with the shaft, a couple pieces of, or a single, well no, it actually is 2 pieces now. Last time I bought it was a single piece. It has 2 pieces of wooden dowel, and what you do is you take your wire like this. It comes with a couple pieces of wire like that. You get the length you want, and you make a 90-degree bend and cut it off. You take your let's say this is a wooden dowel, just pretend it's a wooden dowel and it's round. You drill a hole straight through it, cut a little slot in there so the wire sits flush with the dowel, and you put that 90-degree through there. It shouldn't protrude out the bottom, and you slide it in to the arrow shaft. I should have a piece of it laying around. Here we go. And it's hollow. You slide that in there with your piece here with your 256 rod, and it's like I said, bent in a 90-degree angle. Shove it in there and you glue it. That thing will never come out. Never had a problem. There was another company that had them out, and they had their own little dealies on there. It comes with a plastic fitting, and it's the same thing, except that you have to drill. I don't know if you can see that or not, but you have to drill through the casing and kind of slide this in until it fits into that hole, and then you shove this piece down off the rod, and it secures it here, and you glue that. That's really solid. I like that too. They're made out of the same material. This was the old push rod for the rudder. It would have sat in there something like that. I could use it again, but I figured I would show you how to make the rod, and that will take care of some problems. But for now, I have this single piece of where you go. This is 256 rod. It has a plastic casing that slides in and out of. You've probably seen them before. And you put formers in here to stiffen it up. I'm not going to do that. I'm running push rod in there and be nice and sturdy. Okay. Said I was going to pull this out, so let me shut the camera off. I'm going to pull this out and flip it over and show you exactly the process that I use. Let's start from the top. What I did, you can see the hole right there where the rod goes through. I took a drill the size of the rod. There's the drill bit. I used my fingers and I just put a hole dead center of where the hinge line is through the horizontal stabilizer. Really wasn't hard. I just used my fingers and spun it in, you know, just like that. And that made the hole for the rod. And we reach this over here. Now the rudder control itself, that's not that hard to put in either. This is the threaded end. That goes in first. And once I got the hole drilled, I just worked this in so it went flush and slowly made the corner. And since the slot's already made for the holder for the rod, that just goes right in there. And that was all there was to getting it in there into the, or through, I should say, the horizontal stabilizer. As far as the hole goes, I think we're going to need more light. 1 second, let me work on the lighting here so you can see. Well, I've thought it over pretty thoroughly, and to show you properly and to do it right, I decided that I would have to make some servo rails, and these are just a couple pieces of maple, and the servo is just sitting in there. I haven't glued them in yet, so I can adjust it and make everything correct. And that, the reason for that is once the servo is secure and the control rod is in place, it's going to keep it out of the way of my rudder mechanism. So what I'm going to do is just glue these in real quick and get that over with. I don't think you need to see me glue those in. That's pretty self-explanatory. I'm just going to mix some 5-minute epoxy and dab the ends, slide them in, and make it permanent. Then I'll reinforce. I always put little triangular reinforcements on the bottom of the rails to just to give them a little bit more rigidity, keep them from breaking loose. That's happened before. And sometimes when I feel like I'm going to be extra rough on it, I'll drill holes through the side of the fuselage into the blocks and insert toothpicks with some 5-minute epoxy, and that kind of nails them in place. But I don't know if I'm going to do that. I can always do that later, but for now I'm just going to tack them in with the 5-minute epoxy, actually glue them in permanently with 5-minute epoxy, and worry about the reinforcement later. So give me a couple more minutes and I'll get that done, and we'll go to the back part where the most important things are going to be happening. The servo is mounted, the rails are glued in, the screws are in, it's very solid. There's no jiggling or wiggling, so we're good there. Now I need to flip this over so you can see inside the hole. I'll have to bring it this way some more. Oh boy. It's not going to be easy, is it? You can see pretty well right there, I guess. Well, I hope you can see it. It's kind of dim, but right there's the bottom of the control horn. Let me wiggle it, make it a little easier to see. And you can hear that it's not touching the elevator rod at all. The elevator's in its most upright position, which brings it closer to the top of the fuselage when it draws back because of the movement of the horn, or as it draws out, as it pushes out. Since the angle changes, the rod goes up, but it misses it even at that angle. Even all the way down, it's not touching the rod. See? Otherwise you'd hear it clicking against that rod. So plenty of room for all the guys that say, well, there isn't enough room, I can't do it. Well, this shows you that there is room and you can do it. No worries. I'm going to grab the part that screws onto the horn and install the rod. Let me gather that up and we'll get going. Okay, the horn and clevis piece. Let me get this in the frame. I described it to you before. You can see the yoke. This part here is the yoke. Let me use this to point with. This is the yoke, and inside is the barrel. And that barrel screws on to the horn. Okay? And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to screw this assembly in right here, and I'm going to stick the rod in all the way through and screw it into this piece. It's not hard to do, it just takes a little time. So let me screw this in. You might not be able to see very well. Hold this steady. I'm going everywhere but straight with this thing. One moment, let me lay this thing on its side and I'll be right back. You can see it on its side. I got it started, so I'm just going to screw it in the rest of the way. It goes in there quite a ways. About like that. That's as far as I need to go. Okay. Now you see everything's tucked inside the hole. I'm going to grab the old push rod and stick it in there. Reach across. There's the old push rod. Let me get in the frame. It's awful hard doing close up. It's the old push rod. And I'll slide this bugger in there. Not the easiest thing to do when I'm not at my optimum working angle here. I can't see what I'm doing. There it is. Get it lined up. Whoops, turned it. Big mistake. All right. I'm gonna lay it on its side again so I can get better prepared and get this thing in there. There it is. Let me reach my hand inside, grab this rudder rod, put this up into position, which is about there. And you see, absolutely no rubbing, no touching, perfect. I'll need to drill a hole in the rudder at the right height that I want it and set that in there. Well, you're probably wondering what I used to hold that while I was screwing in the rod. And just a pair of hemostats, little tiny ones. Grabbed a hold of it, basically like that, clicked it on, held it in place, screwed the rod in. It was much easier doing it that way. Okay, let's move on here. I kind of figured out where I wanted to put it. My rod, that is, that's coming out. I'm going to turn that just a little bit more sideways. Does that help? Okay. Picked the rod up, and I wanted it right about there. I could have gone higher, but I don't think it's necessary. So I picked the rod up, took a pencil, marked a line, marked one underneath, marked a spot on the rudder for the indentation of the nylon hinge point for the rod. And what I need to do is drill that out and notch this out all the way down for the rod and that rod bearing. And shove her on there and see what we got. So let me zoom back out and I'll pull the rudder off and show you how I tackle this little bit of work here. I have my rudder pulled off, you can see that. I don't know if you can see the line, but I have a center line marked. And then these two marks here, I don't know if you can see them or not, but I'll show you anyways, is where my rod is going to go. This is where the nylon bearing is going to be. And I'm going to gouge out the rest of this with this drill right here. I'm not really sure how big this is. Let me take a look. It looks just a hair smaller than an 1/8, perhaps 3/32 approximately. No. Yeah, yep, 3/32. So I'm going to start with the hole first, and I'm just going to take the drill, push it in, make a mark, and I'm going to just twist it in by hand, because if I do it with a hand drill, the odds are, without pinching it into a vise, which is easy to do, you just put a couple blocks of wood on both sides and then clamp it down with a vise and then drill your hole. But my accuracy that way is not that great, so I choose to do it this way. And I only have to go in, let's see, I'll give you a measurement. About 5/8. Yeah, 5/8. So let me twist this in real quick. Make sure it stays centered. The trick is not coming back out through the sides. That's the trick. That's why I like doing it by hand, because I can actually pinch right here and see if I'm getting close, and if I need to make an adjustment, I can make an adjustment. I'm just about there already. It's right on my line. Looks like it's a good 90 degrees. I like going in a little bit deeper than what I have to. And I'm plenty deep. I'm almost an 1/8 of an inch more than what I have to be. So that's good. Okay, the hole is drilled. Knock out the dust. And for the nylon bearing part, all I'm going to do is run my knife in straight. Try to keep my fingers out of the way. About the width of the bearing, I'm going to make a slice on an angle towards the inside. You probably can't see this too well. Let me hold it up so you can see that the angle is like that, going towards the center line. Make one on both sides of my center line. Okay, and that's the width of the bearing. Now just cut the ends. Go in on my two lines that are above and below where the nylon bearing goes. And slowly cut that so I don't make any mistakes, which I'm really good at doing. And that pops right out. Shouldn't be much of a big deal. And what I like doing is taking a drill bit. That's approximately that size. Since it's a wedge, I want it more round. So I'll use a drill bit and just kind of drag it in here. And it makes it a little bit more round. You want it to be a little deeper than necessary because you need clearance for that bearing to turn. And once I do all this, I like lining this bearing depth right here with some 5-minute epoxy just to seal it up. Not really to glue anything, but just to make it fuel proof. Okay, now I'm going to do the rod itself, where it comes down, and I like laying my drill bit approximately where it goes and make an indentation first. Then I'll take out a little bit of excess with the knife. like so. And you want the rod to fit tight against the rudder. That's important. And the center of the rod should come out with the center of your hinges, the pin. So that the rod itself here, the shaft going down, is in line with the center of the pin and the hinges. Otherwise, you're going to have a rudder every time you move it is going to want to jump, and you don't want that. You want it to just flop smooth. So you try to get everything lined up the best you can. A little bit of wiggling, finagling. Another thing is that the top part of this has to be glued into here, so we have to keep the bearing itself clear of glue. And that's why I'm going to use 5-minute epoxy, and I'll show you a little bit more on that when we get to it. Lay my drill bit down again so I have a nice straight cut. And take just a bit out of that. Okay, this is the correct drill bit, or is that the correct? Okay, this little black one is the right one. What I'm going to do is use the drill bit and eyeball it and see if it's sitting down the center of my hinges. Got to take more out of the bottom and just use your drill bit as a file. Okay, another thing is that on your rod, I don't know if you can see that too well, but it makes that 90-degree bend right here. This curve, where it makes that 90, is a curve. It's not square. So you will need to take just a little bit out of this corner right here, so that little round section will fit in there much better. You might have found that out before making other ARFs or other models, that particular wire, even in the ailerons, will give you problems if you don't do this little notch out here. Now, take this drill. What I like doing is just dragging the drill around it, kind of twisting as I go, knocking out just little bits of debris. I might have to go just a hair deeper. Alright. And the bearing looks like it's about right. Let's see how this fits, just for fun. Line up my hinges. The rod's going in the way it's supposed to. Sliding it up there tight. There we go. What do you think? It's flopping really good. Let me grab the... Let's see where I'm at here. I got a rub somewhere. I think it's just touching that former. There's a former that sits right here, and I might be just touching it just barely with the edge of my... Oh yeah, it's just the circular part on the inside of the former. It's hitting the threaded rod just enough to make that little bit of a grinding sound. So let me take care of that real quick. Move some of the stuff out of the way. That's gonna be a simple notch out job. I don't have to take very much off. But I'm also cutting plywood, so that makes it a little... It might look like I'm gouging, but it's not that much. So that should do it, just that little bit. Look at that. How's that, guys? Girls? And that's where it's going to sit inside approximately. That's just below the servo rails. I'm going to put it about at the height of the other rail, or the other servo. Right, and there's the other servo. So yeah, there's no rubbing. Lots of movement. And there's one last thing we have to take care of now. Since that's in there and in place, I don't need to mess with it. I'll probably still need to mend my hinges, you know, pin them. And then I have to glue this rod in the bottom, which is not too big of a deal. But you really don't have to glue it at the bottom because there's really not much room. But you can if you want. Just put a little dab of glue on there or something. But what I like to do is I'll pull this out. Because if I'm lucky, which I probably won't be. Ooh, critter coming out of my balsa wood. What is up with that? No, I don't think I can do it. Even if I had the control arm off, I would not be able to. What I want to do is take it all out, put it on the rudder, mount it, glue it, and then try to wiggle it back in there, but I don't think I can do that. But anyways, that's where I'm at. I'm going to shut the camera off for a second. I'm going to attempt taking that out. If it blows up in my face, I don't want to waste your time and go, well, it's not going to work, and put it all back together again. So give me a minute. I'm going to check it out, and we'll go from there. It didn't go quite as I planned. I didn't think it would because just the angles are wrong. So I went ahead and lubricated my hinges like I showed you earlier on the ailerons. I put a little Vaseline on there and give them a quick heat with my lighter and warmed it up, and it flows into the hinges. I did the same to this nylon bearing for the rudder control. Now I have to mix up my epoxy and put it in the hole for the rod and down a little bit down here. I've already run some epoxy on the inside of the bearing slot in the rudder, so that's all nice and sealed up. I didn't think he wanted to see me do that. Just 2 drips of epoxy, mixed it up, smeared it in there, wiped it out with a towel, let it dry. Everything fits on there the way it's supposed to. What I did here is I put a little bit of masking tape in behind the rod where the epoxy is going to be. That way it's not going to accidentally drip onto the vertical fin and stick my rudder to my vertical fin, just in case I have a little excess. And that'll kind of take care of that problem. And another thing I could do is slide it on part way, and I'll put a piece of masking tape in behind this and wrap it the other way and hold the rod into here, which I'm probably going to do because that usually works quite well. And I have a piece already made up right here. What I'll do is just slide it in like this, sticky side towards the rudder itself, and slide it in between. And that'll keep all the epoxy in here. And the epoxy won't stick very well to the masking tape, so I could probably get away with it. I'll have to see how much I put in there. If I put a lot in there, then I'm going to have to go that route. But until then, I'm going to mix up some epoxy. And the thing is, once I put this on this rod, it's on there for good. There's no getting it out without destroying something, and it's permanent. The hinges have to be in place. Everything has to be exactly the way you want it. So it doesn't hurt to go back, test fit everything one more time, and make sure that it's where you want it. You grab my, I'm not in the right spot. There we go. And it's not tight, of course. It will be when I get it all glued in. It'll be right about there. That's where I want it. It's flush to the top where I would like it. And I don't think I'm gonna have a problem with the epoxy. I think I'm gonna go without having to put that in there. And I'll put this on here. Okay, I'm just gonna mix up some drips and just chuck it into that hole and get a toothpick and stick it down in there. See my toothpicks here. Might as well do it while I'm talking about it. Okay. I got a little piece of cardboard here I'm going to mix on. 5 minute. Don't need a tremendous amount. I'm mixing up a little bit more than what I need, but that's okay. These over here. Oh, stir stick. That's a good clean one. Mix it up thoroughly. Like I was saying, I did pull this rod out. I pulled the whole thing out, and I did put the Vaseline or petroleum jelly on the rod right here. Heated it up so it would flow all the way through. You can probably see it's a little dingy color. Maybe you can't, but it is. And I'm going to start dripping this down in here and let it flow. I think I'll use a toothpick to do this, and I can jam it all the way down inside. There's not going to be a whole lot of epoxy in this hole because the rod will fill the void and it'll goop out all over the place, so I'm going to refrain on putting a tremendous amount in there. On my other Cougar, just for just a little added protection on the sides, I laminated a couple pieces of 64th inch ply, or was it 16th? But I put a piece of plywood anyways, all the way up to here on both sides, feathered it in with some polyester resin and microblue, and you couldn't even tell it was there. And if you're worried about that rod breaking through, that's something you can do. All right, here we go. It's ready. Line up my hinges. I'm looking to see how much comes out. I might pull this back off too, just to see if I can use more epoxy. Yeah, I can use more epoxy. So I'll put a little more on there. A little bit more in that hole. Putting a little bit above the bearing edge, just a little bit. Wipe off any excess that's laying around the edges where I might have been a slob and got it all over the place. I'll put a little more down here. Yeah. Getting it all over the place. I went a little too far here. Put a little bit more on here. Right at the base. Oh, it's starting to get a little stringy. Time's running out. Okay, it goes. Make sure it's right where I want it. It's like I said, once this is on there, it's on there forever. I don't like the way this hinge is going into the balsa here. I'm gonna have to pull it out one more time. Put the hinge in there. This hinge seemed to be traveling straight. Apparently I have a lot of glue on there because it's starting to drag pretty good. And if I see some excess, I'm just going to take my model knife and lift it out so it's not bridging the gap. Like that. And if you're wondering how I'm going to seal up all the way through there, I'm going to lay the fiberglass over the top. I'm not going to bother to put the fiberglass in between because when I spray it, I can put many layers of epoxy paint in the gap. So that will take care of that. It feels nice and loose still. I want to set that just a hair closer. Yeah, that looks pretty good. I like that. All right, I'm gonna have to let that sit for 5 minutes, give or take, and I'll be back after that, and we'll see where we're gonna go from here. I'll probably end up taking the masking tape off, and then we'll see where we're at. I found a piece of wood that should cover the hole. I believe it does. Let me take a look, see? Yeah, it covers the hole. And you're probably wondering how in the world I'm going to get this piece shaved down to that size hole. Well, I'm not going to sit here and measure it out to be that size of a hole. What I'm going to do is make the hole fit the piece. And that's not going to take a whole lot of work. Just lay it on its side, put this piece of wood over top of the hole, and go around it with the trusty scalpel or X-Acto knife, whichever you might have, and go around it till it drops into the hole. Pretty simple. Let's see, how can I do this so you can watch? Let's see. Give me a second, I'm going to rearrange things and make it so you can see what I'm doing. Let's do this. I'm going to lay it over top of the hole. This is just barely bigger than the hole, but that's okay. Run my knife across the top. Up the sides. So I can do this without cutting my hand. I'm just going to outline it. Then I'm going to stop the camera and actually make the cut. Okay. There it is. It's just barely bigger than the hole. So I'll just take it and trim everything up so it fits. I'll just cut that out until it drops in and it'll be good to go. Give me a second and it'll be fit in there once and for all. I cut the hole to fit the size of the wood. I CA glued it in place, sanded it flush. Needs a little bit of filler, but that's not a big deal. That's just part of the deal, I guess. And the control rod is still hooked to it, and you can hear it's not hitting. Fits really good, so I'm going to, I believe, hook up a servo and see how well it works. Before we get to the servo part of the build, I want to talk about these push rods. I figured I'd make one real quick. And right off the bat, I made a mistake when I was telling you about the differences between this particular one with a plastic insert and the SIG version. Well, the SIG version works the same. The difference is the plastic piece that holds the rod in does the same thing, goes through the center, makes a 90-degree bend, comes out the top of the rod. Well, the SIG also does the same thing, but I was correct about grooving the dowel, but I was incorrect on which way the drill hole went. And it's the same as this. You might be able to see this, I'm not sure you can. But the rod comes out the top, or through the casing, and the SIG does the same thing. And that holds real well. There's nothing you can do to pull that out besides completely destroy your aircraft. So we'll put one of these together. Get a knife here and slice open the end. Dump the contents out onto the table. If I can get it to come out, here we go. Won't be needing this. This is a carbon fiber shaft, I believe. No, it might be fiberglass. It looks like fiberglass. It really doesn't say what it is. Let me see if it does. Let's see, tubing, solder link, RC, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really say what it's made out of, so that's all right. Oh, I'm going to need this right off the bat, the old one, because what I did is I marked the length of the rod that I wanted on the inside. See if I can find my mark. And there it is. You can barely see it. It needs to be, okay, another one. Come on. Doesn't want to cooperate. There we go. Make it the same length. Actually, I think I'm going to make it from the end of the tube right here. So the longer I can make this rod, the less flexibility it's going to have. All right, and it has the rest of the accessories on the back. I'll use my miter box to cut the length. And I'm sure you've all used a miter box before. This is an X-Acto coarse bladed razor saw. Hopefully it's strong enough to cut through this. This one cuts on a pullback. Okay, it takes care of that. Got a little bit of debris here I need to clean off. Trim it up a little bit better. Okay. Don't need the miter box anymore. We have the shaft. It's the correct length. Or is it the wrong shaft? This is probably the shaft right here. That's approximately the length I wanted it. Very, very close. Good enough. We'll get out the rods. Has 256 threaded rod. Cut these down to the length that you want. All right, let me just get this out of here. Have the 2 wooden dowels. Yeah, 2 of these. Only one is threaded though. 1 threaded rod, 1 straight piece of rod, no threads. This one makes a Z-bend on the inside, probably for the servo, which I'm going to do. They don't. Well, that's really small for 256 rod. Or else the rod I had in my other one's much larger. Let me double check on a servo horn. Oh, the servo, there we go. One of these horns. That's a little bit of slop there. No slop there. So I'm going to find a different rod for this. This does not seem to be the right size. A little disappointed there. Maybe I can take a little chunk off of this. That seems a little better. All right. We'll start with a threaded end, which is going to be my rudder part. I want this to go in the same distance. And what I do with my, I don't know where it went. I'll just mark it with this felt pen. Come on, let's get this right. Just marking where my 90-degree bend is going to go. Somewhere on that dot. I'll make my drill hole in the same place as this. Then I'll take another piece of rod and make the Z-bend at the correct length on the inside of the plane once I get it installed. Then I'll figure out exactly where it has to go after I drill the hole. And then I'll use my Z-bend pliers and make a Z-bend. Okay, oops, still have to do this part. Yeah, double check. Okay. Let me get some more tools around. I need a drill, I need something to make a 90-degree bend, a good sharp 90-degree bend. And I'll be right back. Now that I got pretty much everything together, I found a different chunk of wire. And you're probably wondering why I wasn't going to use that other wire. I said it was kind of small, and the reason I said that is because I have a pre-drilled arm for a Putaba that is made for this size wire. And you can see, I don't know if you can tell or not, but these are drastically different in size and diameter. This is a little larger. The other one would work if I had a regular arm that hasn't already been manipulated. This has already been drilled, so this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to use my Z-bend pliers. These are, I don't know how old they are, and I have no idea where I got them from. Don't know. No label on it. So I'm going to jam this guy into the grooves here. I don't know if you guys ever used one of these. You'll know that when they're together like this, the slot for the wire runs on an angle, so when you when you crimp the handles, you can press the handles, it makes a Z-bend. I will show you real quick. I believe I bought these when I was stationed in Japan back in the early 80s. And it's really made for metric, so that's why I got to tap the wires in. Sometimes it'll hold, sometimes it won't. We'll find out. But you can see that the bend is coming in. That's pretty close. There's the Z-bend. I kind of went too far. I'm gonna have to correct that a little bit. All right, if I can get a hold of it. There we go, one Z-bend. Fits my wire. Okay. Got that taken care of. The length has yet to be determined on this one, because this one is going to go on the servo horn itself. So when I get inside, I'll have the servo mounted. I'll stick this wire onto the horn inside the plane, right next to the tube, and I'll figure out exactly how long I have to have it with the elevator in the neutral position, the servo in neutral position. So there's going to be minor adjustments when I get done. All right, that's one part done. Now this one. Let's see, where did I didn't make my marks anywhere on this one yet. And that's for the threaded side. And I will put my mark somewhere in here. Looks fairly close. Like that. How long is this dowel? Maybe I have to go back further, because this wooden dowel is quite long. I want to utilize the maximum strength. So I'll go back further. I'm going to go back. Let me measure it and I'll give you a measurement here. Go back 2 inches, or you can call it 5 millimeters, whichever one you prefer. So I'll drill my hole there. Alright, now I'll need to know exactly how long to make my wire. Gonna need my handy dandy, I'll use a short Sharpie here. I'm gonna lay this on the bench. Well, maybe I'll just lay it on top. Same length. Go through the hole right there. The Sharpie is not cooperating. Okay, the wire is marked. I don't know if you can see it, but it's marked right here. I'm going to make a 90-degree bend in that. This is an extremely old vise I got from my dad. Been using it forever. Set my mark up. Okay. Now it just has to be close. It doesn't have to be exact. I always use my pliers to tap a good 90 into it. There's a 90. Nice thing about these Z-bend pliers, they have holes for the wire. You can put your wire through here. Oops, wrong hole. Front. And since it doesn't have to be very long, I'll just snip it off. It gives me a nice cut off right there. And it will be in there something like that. What I have to do is cut a groove in this guy right here. I don't remember what I used the last time to cut the groove. So I'm going to start with, let's see, marking how far I have to go. I guess that's irrelevant. I can cut all the way down it doesn't matter. Alright, move these things out of the way temporarily. Okay. I'm going to start by try to make a straight line here. And I'm going to use the end of a push rod. Let's see, where to go? This guy right here. Use the threads to make the groove. Where's my line? There it is. Use it kind of like a file. It's not cooperating very well. There we go. You can see I've started on the line, or the groove right here. And once I get it going and get an established straight line using this as my guide, and I'll probably use an X-Acto to, you know, to do wedge cuts until it drops in far enough. When I get to that point, I'll come back. I'll take a short break here and just start filing on this, and when I get it done, I'll be back. Nothing ever goes as planned. That's always a given in this hobby. I had to get out the Dremel tool with a cutting wheel on it, and I made a line with my felt pen. All I did was sat my felt pen down like this, stuck it up against the dowel, run a line. That's how I made the line. Started to cut it out with a knife, and it wasn't going so well because this is an extremely good dowel. A lot harder than most of the stuff I run across anyways. And I held it down and just kind of grooved it out with the cutoff wheel. Not exactly what it's supposed to be used for, but it was useful in this case. Okay, and the rod, that fits in there about like that. About as flush as I can get it. I might have to go a little more if it doesn't fit. No big deal. But I'm going to cut into this thing. I found a drill that's the right size. At least the same size as the rod. Not necessarily the right size to go to make this come up through it, but it's a good start. I don't want to hold this too tight because it'll crush the tube. That's why it's kind of moving when I put pressure on it. And it doesn't want to stay in one spot. There we go. Alright, that's in there. I might have to cut this shorter because it has to be small enough to fit in here. So I'm going to take the cutoff wheel to it and cut off a little bit of it. Give me a moment. All right, this should slide up in there, into that hole. There it is. Okay, can you see that sticking out of there? Probably not. I'll zoom in on it when I get ready to put the dowel in. You can see how far it comes out the hole. And now I'll have to completely gouge this out to the right size because this is going to have to slide over the whole rod. Got to put the rod in there, and this is going to have to be shoved in behind it. So I'm going to take a look and see how much I got to take off. A little bit down on this end. Okay, let's see where we're at. Maybe a touch more. That looks pretty good. Next has to be some 5-minute epoxy. You goop up some 5-minute epoxy, shove it in here on the dowel with the rod already in place, and then jam this thing on there. Probably has to be tapped in, so we'll take it one step at a time. Let me get my epoxy and we'll get started. I have my 5-minute epoxy, piece of paper to stir on, toothpick to get inside a little deeper with the epoxy. The wooden dowel is cut. Got the rod, fits in there really good. There it is. And the wooden dowel. Oh, fell out of my little hole here. Okay. I'll show you the test fit. Just like that. I will go further, but I'll have a problem pulling it out. All right. I'm gonna mix up some epoxy. Get this show on the road. I'm not really sure how much I'm gonna use, but I'm gonna mix quite a bit. And it's 50-50 mix, I'm sure you all know that. That's close enough. Mix it all up. This is guaranteed to make a mess when I push the wooden dowel in there. Okay, right off the bat, put some epoxy in the tube, and this particular drip of glue I'm going to have go right towards the hole. Just kind of let it drip. I can see where it's going. It's pretty good. And I'm going to coat the rod. Kind of roll it on here a little bit. Coat the rod. Because it's going to lay on the wooden dowel, and it will also have epoxy on it. Okay. Oop, stay in there. Now I'll coat the wooden dowel. I'll lay a lot right down the center of the groove where the rod goes in. And this is bound to get your fingers a little goopy. Coat the wooden dowel. Just a thin coat on the dowel. If you put too much on there, it's really a waste because it gets scraped off as it's being pushed into the tube. All right. Wooden dowel. Need to twist it into some kind of a order here. Okay. Shove it in all the way until it's even. It's like that. Grab a paper towel here. And a little bit of denatured alcohol for thinning it, cleaning it up a little bit. Tons on the end. And that is it. There you go. Not much to it, pretty simple. And like I said, the other side I'm going to worry about after I get it installed, because I'll install this just the way I installed the other one, which is not a big deal. Clean my tool up here. All right, while this is drying, I'm going to take a break and basically install it like I did the last one, and when I come back it'll be already installed. We'll get ready to mark the servo end. Ooh, I've got some stuff on this side. The servo end of this rod. Servo will be mounted. I'm sure you know how to mount servos, so we're not going to go into that. And I guess I'll be right back. You can see I got the servo in there. I believe it's the top one right here. And the rod is just kind of sitting inside the tube. It's not doweled in or anything. I took the arm off the servo, put the wire with the Z-bend in it, slid it into the rod, and pushed the horn down in neutral position on the servo. And another thing I did, took my Sharpie and I marked right at the edge of the tube where neutral is. Okay, so when I slide it in, and to mark my hole, that has to be at the very front of the tube, that mark, to maintain a fairly straight rudder position. The rudder itself is being held in place with some masking tape. It's in a neutral position. So the rod and everything should be neutral. So when I drill the rod, it should stay in this position, or maybe just a hair off, a quarter turn here or there. At least that's what I'm hoping for. So let me take it back out now and see what I can do with it. And we'll go from there. There it is, all done. Rod's installed. You can see it right here. It's pretty much dry now. I just assembled it the same way I did the opposite side. It's no big deal. I just thought I'd show you the insides. I'll flip it over and slide it forward. Okay, that's as far as I can go. And you can see the plug is in on the side. Yeah, you're right. You're wondering, how did I do that without taking that little square plug out of the side? Well, the answer is I cut that little plug out again and did all the work and then put the plug back in. So there you have it. Okay. I'm going to turn this thing on, plug the battery in, so you can see that, look at that massive throw. A lot more throw than I'll ever use. There's the elevator. That's not set up at maximum throw yet, but I shouldn't need much more than that. And again, rudder, lots of throw. Let me turn it towards you, maybe you can see how much throw there really is. Okay, I want to hold it like that. Tons. And another thing I had to take into account that I didn't talk about is that off of this rudder servo, I'm also going to have to drive the steerable nose wheel on the retract, and that is going to be next. I think I'll have to have that all set up before I really can say that the rudder servo is done, and that should be no problem. I plan on using some goldenrod, that cable inside of plastic, basically to manipulate the corners and get into that retract a little better. So there you have it, folks. The hidden rudder control on a SIG Kougar. Nice and stiff in there. Everything is shut off. Transmitter's off. And that looks like it's going to be the end of this video. So on the next video, I'll have to see where I'm at here. We're probably going to do the nose gear retract. I've been putting that off for a while because I got to cut into the wing and cut the former, and but we'll get into that next and run the control rod from the servo to the retract and see how far we go with that. So with all that being said, I'm going to call it a day, clean up, and probably find some other project to tinker with for a little while. So until the next time, have a good one.